Hello and welcome to Midwives. I'm Jess and I'm a student midwife who's currently studying for pathophysiology. And I've really struggled to find videos that are relatable to midwifery revision. And so I thought, why not give it a go and make my own? So here I am. It's not something I've really done before, so bear with me. Not the greatest at drawing. So we'll have some dodgy, anatomically incorrect drawings along the way, but hopefully it will help me to learn and help others too. So today I wanted to talk through the regulation of blood glucose levels and how conditions such as type 1 and type 2 diabetes and gestational diabetes affect the regulation of blood glucose levels. So for us to be able to understand diabetes and the effects it can have, we need to be able to understand how blood glucose is regulated in the body. A few key organs of note would be your pancreas, this little cloud figure here, and your liver. And there's some funny little words that we're going to use. So we've got the alpha and beta cells of the islets of Langerhans, and they're really key to this mechanism in the body. So in your bloodstream, you have, a regular level of glucose in the blood anyway. And when this rises, for instance, when you've eaten, there's lots more sugar readily available in the bloodstream once it's been broken down. And this is kind of detected by those beta cells in the islets of Langerhans, which is found in your pancreas. And it stimulates the secretion of something called insulin, which, if anybody remembers back to GCSE science, insulin is a bit like the lock that opens the door for the glucose to be taken up into the cells for energy production. So insulin binds to the insulin receptors on target cells, such as in the liver and in muscle cells, and that allows for the uptake of glucose via facilitated diffusion into those cells to go on for energy production. Or in the liver, it's stored in a short-term form of glycogen. So, and long-term storage would be stored as adipose tissue, such as your fat stores. When blood glucose levels fall, this is detected by the alpha cells in the islets of Langerhans. And this stimulates the release of something called glucagon. I like to think of it as glucose gone, glucagon. And the glucagon binds to the glucagon receptors on the liver. And this stimulates the release of an enzyme called glycogen phosphorylase. So that short-term storage of glucose is glycogen. So glycogen phosphorylase is released, and this is the enzyme that's responsible for breaking down the glycogen into glucose for it to then be diffused back into the bloodstream, and then the glucose level rises. So that's basically how blood sugar levels in the body are maintained and regulated. And then there are conditions such as diabetes that can affect this. So you've got your type 1 diabetes, which tends to be associated as a childhood disorder. And it tends to be where there's a near or complete loss of function in the beta cells in the islets of Langerhans. So sufferers with type 1 diabetes tend to rely on insulin injections, so artificial insulin, to lower their blood glucose levels when they have food that's high in sugar, and they have to monitor their blood glucose levels throughout the day. With type 2 diabetes, that's a condition where it tends to be in the older generation, tends to be a risk factor over 40, and it's kind of associated with obesity and sedentary lifestyles. And this is where the insulin that is produced is less. You get insulin resistance, or the body can't cope with the demand for insulin. And so this is a type of diabetes that can often be controlled with diet. Sometimes can lead on to needing treatments such as metformin or insulin injections later on in life. Then you've got gestational diabetes. So here's where our pregnancy comes in. The placenta actually releases hormones, one of them being human placental lactogen. And this naturally, in all women when they're pregnant, it creates insulin resistance. And that's so that the body is able to, it doesn't take up as much insulin into the cells, and it allows for the insulin to be taken in by glucose to be taken in by the fetus, so we can get normal fetal growth. If this insulin resistance is too great, then that's when you get gestational diabetes that can occur. And so that the blood glucose levels is much higher in the blood, and that blood glucose, the glucose concentration affects the amount of glucose that the fetus uptakes. And that's why we get macrosomic babies. And that's basically it. Obviously, there's lots of implications for the fetus, macrosomia being one. There's a high risk of needing a cesarean section for mum. You've got a risk of shoulder dystocia because a lot of that fat store goes up onto the shoulders of the baby. There's the risk of birth trauma, both for mum and baby. The pregnancy becomes high risk for gestational diabetes, so there tends to be a lot more scans for fetal well-being, referrals to specialists, interprofessional working, CTG monitoring, and once baby's born, there's a risk of neonatal hypoglycemia. So there's lots of things that this condition can cause, and also you've got to remember that it can be quite an emotional time for mum in pregnancy anyway, and being diagnosed with a condition such as gestational diabetes can be really overwhelming for parents. And there's also a long-term health risk for mum with an increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes. So I hope that was helpful. I hope you liked my video. Hopefully I'll get around to doing some more. So yeah, hopefully that's helped to understand diabetes and blood sugar regulation. Hopefully I've not got anything wrong. It's purely from memory, mainly to help with my revision. Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks for watching.